Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to It's Sunday with Scotty and Raini. She's not here yet. She may or may not make an appearance. She got back yesterday from being out of town for a week and had a headache this morning when she got up. She does not fly well, my wife, and so she may or may not make an appearance this morning. We'll see. Good morning, everybody. Field Guy, good to see you there this morning over in the chat room, by the way, folks. And if you're listening, you're obviously catching this show on my YouTube channel or very possibly our Facebook channel. You might even be viewing from Twitter. So you can, the best chat room of them all is to come on into the YouTube channel at youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And this is It's Sunday with Scotty and Raini. It's something we started a couple of years ago. And sometimes we get a full run of Raini. And then we go through some Sundays where she's gone or out of town or has things going on. So today, knock on wood, we'll see her eventually, depending on how her headache treats her. Susie Q, good morning. Good to see you this morning. And I was sitting here for about 40 minutes, just blowing time and waiting for the show to start. And I got involved in doing some art, and I get buried in some of the illustration work. And sometimes if I'm not paying attention, I can end up a couple of minutes late. So I wasn't paying close attention. The last I looked at the clock was about 10 minutes of 9. I got 10 minutes. So that happens. So good morning. I hope you got your cup of coffee. And I hope your day is going well. And this second day of your weekend is going well. If you have a traditional weekend. The weather is starting to get nice up here. I got to tell you, I'm a little skeptical of it ushering in an early spring. However, we always traditionally have always had February thaws up here in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and it's been warmish, and then it'll get cold again. And by warmish, I mean 30 above freezing is nice and warm in the middle of winter up here. Because above freezing, what happens? Things start to thaw a little bit. And so we've been in the upper 30s, 40 yesterday afternoon. I stepped out of the open garage onto that southern exposure driveway and front yard, and it was my first brush with the sunshine. It felt hot, and that was nice. And there was a little bit of a breeze, so it cooled it a little bit out there, but it was nice outside. And we're going to go up very darn close to the 50s, if not 50, by the middle of this week, Tuesday to Wednesday. And if it's getting up that high in air temperature out of my drive, it'll be close to 60, which is nice. Hey, Gina Modler. I see you at 6 in the morning where I was. So I was like just waking up. Are you out on the left coast somewhere? So a couple hours behind us out there. And Teresa Duntone, is good to see you. Harder to see you these days. You're so busy doing your own show and your own stuff and the show you do with everybody else. And so it's good to see you this morning. And who else we got in here? Morgan Snow is here this morning. Good morning. And I know I saw Uncle Dave. Uncle Dave Potter is here somewhere. Grumpy Stack is here from Louisiana. And how's the tire business down there? The tire business. So the Cajun tire man, Grumpy's tires. So I'm invincible, he said. Oh, invisible, he said. Well, it's good to know. Keep talking, then we can find you. Look for the wet spot. or throw flour in the air, something like that. Teresa, running our family business. Arg. Good to be here, Scotty. What is your family business again? I know we've talked about this in the past. With the millions of people I talk to, it seems. Refresh my memory, our memory. What's your family business this morning? So we might have a Ruben Fasthorse sighting this morning too, by the way. I said I would send him a link, so I suppose I could do that now. He doesn't always see our our announcements. Let's see. I'm looking for him. Ruben Fast Horse. Here we go. This morning's link. We were going to do a show with him on Friday, but then I bailed on Friday's show. It's just one of those days, folks. One of those days. All right. Why isn't it pasting for me? There it is. Boom. It's either my keyboard or my fingers no longer operate correctly. I can hit Command V is paste, and many times I get a V that shows up. I'm like, damn it. And I do that 3 times before I finally get my Command V in there. Teresa says, my end is all paperwork and accounting, spreadsheets, contact costs, acquisitions, payroll, accounting, yada, yada. That's the stuff in business I hate doing. So, oh well. Thank you, though, for sharing that with us. Not mocking what you do, just when it involves mathematics. It's like adding and subtracting, you know? I was good with math in school when it was adding and subtracting. Adding and subtracting. I heard a comedian. I'm stealing a joke from Jamie Lithgow, and he said adding and subtracting was great in school. He says we all knew how to add and subtract, and that was fine for math. After that, there's nothing else we needed. He says because it's like this. Let's look at us in the room here. Let's say we've got you've got a 12-pack of beer, and you have 13 people. This is your math problem. How do you make that work? And for me, the answer would be, well, as soon as we got rid of the other 12 people, I was good. So hopefully that wasn't too obscure and I mistold it. So it was funnier when he said it. Of course, I don't have an audience. He had an audience. Well, I got an audience. I mean, he had a live audience. They'd all be sitting out here laughing. Well, and we got both the big easy chairs in here, the big overstuffed chairs. Rocky was here yesterday. Rocky Stucci was here yesterday afternoon, and might make an appearance again today. So I was hoping to get him for morning our It's Sunday show. But so yeah, they were Raini and Rocky were over there. I was over here, and Raini's mom was traipsing around here as well. We got a chair for her, but we weren't doing radio. We were just talking. So. Yeah, we do need one designated driver. There you go, Morgan Snow, thinking practical. Yo, there's Rocky Stucci. How you doing, brother? You're over on Facebook. If you can come into the YouTube channel, there's a much broader chat room over there that doesn't show up in Facebook. If you want to come into the chat, too bad you're not here, brother. Or if you want to call in, Rocky, I could put you on for a few minutes. I don't know what you're doing, where you are, but here, I'm going to paste this into the chat room, and hopefully you can see it. Here's the link. If you want to call in, he's on my Essie. I don't know if that meant way or Essie. ESY. So, why, thank you, Teresa Denton. This matches this is a shirt that I can't remember if Rainey got this for me or my kids got it for me. It was like at either a secondhand thrift store or it was on sale at Walmart or something. I don't know where they got it, but it's very cool. And this actually follows up the pair of matching boxers that Rainey got me. Boy, that's a couple of years ago now, but I've got the matching boxers to this. And man, is that an ensemble when I wear both of those together and no pants. So I can go strutting out on my driveway. Who we got? We got Dave Potter is calling in. I'm hoping to get Rocky in here too. Maybe we can get Rocky coming in. We'll see. Hey, good morning, brother.
Morning. I'm just adjusting this easel so that I can have a better shot here.
Yeah, field guy, that set makes the ladies melt. It makes them melt and makes the men salute in the right way. So, yes, can you imagine that, though? I go out to the end of my driveway in the morning to get the Sunday morning paper, and I've got this hoodie on, and I've got my matching boxers on, and I strut with my coffee to the
I
end
bet
of the
you
driveway.
strut.
I'm like, "Good morning, America. How are you?" So, anyway, good morning, Dave Potter. So, what are you up to today, Dave?
Oh, I am. The last few days, I just have not had motivation. So I'm really working on motivating myself to paint and sew and do all the things that I need to get done.
Lack of motivation. That is what is it? The hue and cry of the artist, the writer, the artist of any kind. It's like, you know what? I lack motivation today, and I have no muse today.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to write today. I don't know what to. I mean, I got plenty of commercial stuff I got to work on, but there it is. Hey, Brianna Learman. Hello. I just have it playing in the background, so I'm working on competency reflection for school. Competency reflection. Everybody put out
Hey,
good energy for Brianna for
Brianna.
competency reflection. What's it look like? What's competency look like when it's reflected? There's the good question.
It's the same, but it's backwards.
It's the same, but it's a little backward. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you won't be active in the chat. Just wanted to say hello. Well, it's so good to see you, Brianna. It's so good to see that two-dimensional face of yours
There's
over
nothing
there.
wrong with lurking and listening.
Nothing wrong with it at all. Rainey and I and Rocky were just talking about that yesterday. You know, you do a video simulcast like this, a video cast, and most people, only the ones in the chat room are the ones that are actually mostly actively looking at the video. Everybody just listens. So there you go. Good to see you, Brianna. Say hey to John, wherever he may be.
Kids.
So, and I have a question for John, if he knows how to work this stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to call a professional in. Not that John isn't a professional. He just doesn't have a business surrounding this. He's a handyman and of all sorts. And so we've got that big Nordic track, and it turns on, but the computer doesn't come on. Something happened. Something went wrong with the wiring. I'm wondering if John might know how to fix something like that, or I might have to call the Nordic track specialists in. So, hello, all you beautiful people. Hello, Scotty Roberts. Hello, Louis Boyce. Try smacking it. I did that a couple of times.
Get out of
here. Pick it up, through it. Kick it on the side. Now, the only thing that comes on is the little blue Bluetooth light, but nothing else works. We're not sure why. Maybe it could be that I need to plug it into some different. Now that we've got everything all hooked up down here, I might need to run an extension cord to a dedicated socket or something like that. And so, hoa, Misu. Why does it always cut off the lower half like that? There we go. Let's just do it that way.
Live from New York.
Live from New York.
Hey,
good
Uncle.
To see you, brother.
Hey, Chia.
How are you, sir?
Buddy. You know, you were talking about I kind of piped in a little bit of what you were talking about the weather there, and it's the same out here. It's gonna be like 50s all week. It's crazy. No precip. Maybe a sprinkling of rain.
I don't think we're gonna have any precipitation here either. Like if I say, "Hey Siri, what's the 5-day weather forecast for Somerset, Wisconsin?"
Yeah. You know, it's crazy because in Wisconsin and Minnesota, living in both places myself, it's that whole lake effect. If it's not Lake Superior or Lake Michigan, you know, and I really do believe when they say just wait 5 minutes and
that's it. This forecast is dramatically different from yesterday. Let's see. It's going to be 41 today, 41 tomorrow with sunshine. Let's see. Tuesday is going to be 45 degrees and a 70% 70% chance of rain. And then Wednesday, it's going to be, it was at 49 yesterday. Now it's at 45 for Wednesday with wind. And
But
then it's
if
got
we
Thursday,
get 45 and rain,
60%
all the
chance
snow
of,
will be gone.
get this.
Yeah.
Get this. Thursday, 33 degrees and a 60% chance of snow. Typical February thaw up here.
Yeah, I remember living in Cloquet near Duluth and Eveleth near Hibbing.
What'd I do? I lost all my sound.
And all the it would snow right up till June.
Oh.
We can hear you, Scotty.
It was Siri. Siri interrupted my my sound for some reason.
So I remember those days where the snow would end in June.
Yes.
But now it's not even close to that. So
that's right.
It's weird.
Like I mentioned the other day, Drew Carey's big dick jokes. My dick is so big, there's still snow on the tip in July.
That's right.
I ain't claiming that, folks. I'm a humble man. That's just a Drew Carey joke.
That's funny.
Happy Sunday. Bada boom.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Turn your hearing aid up. What, Brianna? What was that? No, it was my Siri. It started searching, and then it blocked off all my sound for some reason. I don't know why that is. You keep that weather because our weather is your weather, says Lewis Boyce. Where are you located, Lewis, again? Thank you, Teresa. You can, anybody who wants that joke can take it and use it. So,
well, I was going to share a powwow joke with you guys.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Do so. They're safe to use. They're clean. I love the fact that comedy brings you to the old guys like Red Skelton, Don Rickles. They brought you right to the line, but then you crossed it mentally and you took it a different direction. So yeah. I'm at the hardware store here in Warwick.
That better.
And with my Susie, and I was teaching her some Lakota.
My show.
And some Lakota words. And in that way, and this guy behind me was kind of huff and puffy. He had his arms crossed, and he was kind of in our conversation, eavesdropping. And he said, "Guys, this is America. This is America.
Oh, yeah.
We speak English here." And he said, "Go back to your country and speak your language." So I looked at Susie, we looked at each other, and we camped out in his backyard for 2 months. Go back to your land.
We went back to our country, dude.
There you go.
So.
There you go. Another time I was at the grocery hardware store again, and I had 2 big bags of peat moss and potting soil. And this guy was saying, "Wow, do you have a green thumb? Are you a gardener?" And I said, "No, I'm just buying back my land 1 bag at a time."
There it is. There you go.
Those are the 2 jokes I have that are.
That's a lifelong purchase there.
But yeah, it's great because you have to, under the circumstances, whoever you are, Irish, Scottish, Native American, you got to laugh at yourself and laugh at the situation and make fun of yourself too. My dad used to say that because I was back in South Dakota. I was in Aberdeen, South Dakota, where my dad went to college. And so he took us off the reservation, and in Aberdeen, it's all white Americans. So I was in the 70s, I was the black kid, I was the Latino kid, I was the Asian kid, and I was the Native American. I was one of the very few minorities.
Y'all look alike to me.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I'd come home and say to my father, I said, "Dad, they're making fun of me." And my dad looked at me and he said, "Help them, because if you make fun of yourself, you beat him to the punch.
That's pretty much it.
You know, so he said the best revenge is living your life, like Jerry Seinfeld.
It's like I always say, you cannot offend me unless I appropriate your intended offense. Like Doc Holliday said, Val Kilmer is Doc Holliday. Sir, if I am to be insulted, I must first respect your opinion. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. You can't
Very
insult
true.
me. You can't. Well, you can insult me. If I don't appropriate that insult, you're not going to offend me.
Amen.
So I don't care what you say, is what it comes down to.
You know, it's interesting, as you well know. You've both been out here, Fort Ty, and different places, Gettysburg, whatnot. There are so many Native American words out here. I'm just blown away. Lenape,
Hey, radio wifey,
Delaware. Hey, Wendy. So I like to quote Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, where he says, "Yeah, I'm, you know, and my Susie is from Long Island too." So
Long Island. If you're from out there, it's Long Island.
She's from Brookville, Long Island, and so Jerry Seinfeld is from Massapequa, which is a Lenape or
is that a Jewish word?
It's a Shinnecock Native American.
Only if you go Massapequa. I don't know. There's lots of doctors there and lawyers.
So he says, you know, Massapequa is a Native American word. It means by the mall.
By the mall.
Even the Indians knew retail back then.
You know who I always liked, and this came out several years ago, was did you ever see, it wasn't Saturday Night Live, it was one of those other it was either like it, I don't think it was in Living Color, I don't think it was that long ago, but one of those comedy magazine shows, late night, and they had, I don't know the actor's name. You've seen him in movies. Now he's bald. He's very light-skinned black, unless he's something else. You never know anymore these days.
Yeah.
But he played Eddie Thundercloud. Did you ever see those? Eddie Thundercloud. He played Native American, running for president of the United States, and it was Hillary Clinton. I think it was Hillary running against whoever she was running at. I don't think it was when Donald Trump was first running. I think it was before that. But they'd always show him. He'd be like out in a swamp or a creek, and he's wearing nothing but a breech clout, and he's got a spear, and he's got a feather in his hair, and he's aiming with his spear, and he looks up and goes, "Oh, hello, I'm Eddie Thundercloud. I'm running for this here presidency of these here United States." And he says, and man, you got to look him up. Go to YouTube and look up Eddie Thundercloud.
All right.
And he said, I have one surefire way to stop all the nasty debate and to get some things done in Congress. I will approach Congress as president with my matunkahe. And he holds up, I don't even know if that's a real word, like a stone tomahawk.
Hammer her. Yeah.
I will come in with my matunkahe. And he says, if my opponents do not agree with me, I will not veto. He says, I will bash their brains out with my matunkahe. He says, and then we will get things done. You will see Congress at work. And then they would show all these other actors, white actors, playing Native Americans with wigs, and they're standing at the casino dealing cards. He goes, oh, yes, my life was nothing before Eddie Thundercloud came into it. And I can vouch for Eddie Thundercloud, you know, and stuff like that. And it was a beautiful, beautiful, offensive, but richly comedic, offensive comedy that even an Indian could laugh at. So you got to go look him up. Eddie Thundercloud.
That sounds.
And it would always say at the end, you know, it would show him he was naked, and they had a fuzzed out circle around his midsection there. And he's dancing in the water with his spear. And he's doing this. And they're going, and the voiceover says, vote Eddie Thundercloud, you know, for something. And it was fantastic comedy.
That reminds me of have you ever seen that cartoon series called King of the Hill?
Yes.
And they got John Redcorn.
Yes, John Redcorn.
John Redcorn is dating this guy's wife, you know, or sleeping with her. But every time they show him, the wind is
Someone's
going
just-
through his hair.
Yes. Every time they show him, paint with the colors of the wind. So,
It's very, what you're saying is very reminiscent. Something that's offensive but hilarious, and you have to laugh. Is Mel Brooks
comedy
Bell's
is meant to be offensive.
Blazing Saddles? I love
Blazing
that.
Saddles.
You can't get away with that now. You know?
You can't.
And there's Mel Brooks on, the black people are moving, but they're not a part of the wagon train. And they said, when we get attacked by the natives, we had to make our own circles. So they're running by themselves in a circle.
Nice.
and Mel Brooks comes out as a chief. He's painted up, feather headdress with other Indians. And he's like, what should we do? They ask him, what should we do? He said, let them go. Jeez, they're darker than we are.
Yes.
So
In Living Color says Ed Weeb, you can't have that show anymore.
Yeah.
So, it's too bad in all our sensitivity that we've canceled out good comedy. I remember seeing, and I've mentioned this before, John Cleese from Monty Python.
Yeah.
Who's elderly now, but he was doing an interview not long ago, and he was talking about this very same thing, political correctness and everybody's offended now. You can't tell jokes. And he says, everybody's off limits. Well, except for the Mexicans. You can joke about the Mexicans. But anyway, love Mel Brooks. Morgan Snow says, yeah, me too. He's come out with The History of the World Part 2.
Wow. I remember the first one, yeah.
I just saw there's a lot of big names in it. Everybody wanted to be in this movie, I guess. So go look up the trailer on that one. So
nice. Yeah, that is so true. It's just so much PC stuff that you can't say boo.
Right.
Oh, should I say, people constantly come up to say Native American, or can I say American Indian?
Yeah.
And I say you can say both. The best thing is I'm going to go see my Lakota friend Ruben Fast Horse in New York. Yeah. But you're using my tribe. And so if you want to go to the Southwest, I'm going to go see the Indians in the Painted Desert. Well, who are you going to see? There's Hopi, there's Navajo, there's Apache, there's Pueblo. It really helps just, in that sense, if you want to know somebody. But
Ed Weeb is asking what big names are still alive. Oh, it's not all the people from the old movie. It's all current actors wanting to be part of a Mel Brooks movie, which I think is really cool. So, I was not impressed, but I was like, oh wow, this isn't a cheaply made broadcast, a motion picture. So,
I'm sure it was toned down quite a bit from the earlier one, but. And that's what I love about Mel Brooks. He made fun of everybody. He was Jewish and made fun of himself. And Don Rickles was great. I miss him.
Don Rickles was fantastic.
Yeah. Tim Conway.
Good. All of them. Well, Don Rickles used offense in his comedy.
Yeah.
Who did you just mention too? Tim Conway wasn't so much that way. He was sweet comedy. You look back at the Carol Burnett show and things like that. And they made a shtick out of cracking each other up during bits, which was very fun.
Harvey Korman, he lost it every time. Harvey, with Tim.
Yeah. Mel Brooks is anti-Trump, in case anyone doesn't know. It's okay. I don't care what his political beliefs are. So,
yeah.
I'm pro-Trump, but I will tell you at the same time, I'm pro-DeSantis. And I look at that and I go, Donald, what are you doing? There are some days I look and I see all the insults he's throwing out at DeSantis, who he supported and gave his backing to. And I'm like, DeSantis is not that far off from you, Trump. He's just a younger version of you. And I think brings very different things to the table. But when I mean he's not unlike Trump, He's conservative. He's Republican. But I see Trump insulting him now because he sees him as a possible opponent in the run-ups to the Republican convention. And I think, make fun with it. Do a DeSantis versus Trump. Who's going to win? Who's the better Republican candidate? Now, I'm not Republican, but I vote Republican because they're closer to my political ideology. I know you and I, Ruben, have talked about Trump before, and you had some issues with Trump, I think, over what he did with Native peoples and things like that. And I've looked, and I can't find the things. Maybe state your opinion on this, because I'd like to know. I hear a couple of, I've heard several Native people say, well, we don't like what he's done with Native Americans. And I'm like, I haven't seen him do anything I thought negative with Native Americans, unless it was because he supported the pipeline and things like that. But he supported the pipeline because it was good for America. So what's your take on that? Not to get too political.
No, you're fine, and I'm open to it. I'm in a very stable place. I'm in the sense, I would say that the thing that kind of really tipped the scale was in the 80s. He was anti-Native American casinos. It competed with him, and so there was that business competition that he was very he put him down. Sure. But and then the pipeline, of course. But I have to say this, that most Native Americans, and till I moved out here, and with my Susie, she got me to vote. So I do Democrat, but sure. For the most part, most Native American people don't vote. Why? Because they don't trust the government. Why should they? No American president has ever. Obama came out to the Standing Rock, and Clinton came out to Pine Ridge at some point, but it was just to save face or whatever. But nobody's really apologized. The Pope has apologized to Native people. The Prime Minister of Canada has apologized.
What did the Pope do to Native American people?
The Catholic Church, when they couldn't kill us.
What the church did.
The church. So it represented that. In that way, but nothing against the Pope, but he felt like he should say something.
I'm not Catholic.
I was that close to becoming a priest, so
that's right.
I always tell this joke in my lectures. I will say, when they couldn't kill us off, the government, U.S., and we're the only two people, the Seminole of Florida and the Sioux in the Dakota have defeated the U.S. military
on U.S. ground.
On U.S. ground, they were swamp people, so it's hard to fight in the swamp.
Very hard.
I don't want to get too much into this, but
I know. We're just. I look. Matthew Sainsbury said the only thing I heard about Trump was the border wall to keep Mexicans out. I think that's the misnomer about the border wall. It wasn't to keep Mexicans out. Mexicans are welcome here if they want to go through the legal process to immigrate and to apply for citizenship. What the wall was meant to do was prevent the overrunning of the border by people who were not citizens, the infiltration into the United States. And that involves, nowadays, is different than it was 100 years ago with Ellis Island. But even Ellis Island, you had to go through the process. The Irish had to go through the same process. You couldn't just wander into the United States and build a house and start a business. And you couldn't do that. It was done, but after we became, I guess, more incorporated as a government, you couldn't just wander in and do that anymore. Times changed. No matter what the good or the atrocity may have been committed to get us here, now we're something completely different than we were 200 years ago. And so now we are a nation, and there's still problems. There's still things to work on. But at the same time, and I'm trying to keep this lighter rather than get into a lot of minutia of detail. Right now, You can't just cross any of our borders and just wander in. You have to go through the process. You try to go wander into Russia and see where that'll get you. Go try to wander into Turkey or Iran or Israel or Egypt or Ghana. Maybe you can do it in Ghana. I don't know. But France, Germany, England, you can't just go. There are allies. You can't go over to England and just wander in as a United States citizen and say, I'm gonna become a citizen here now in my own right and start making money. No, they go, no, you got about 6 weeks. Did you fill out the paperwork for a visa? Did you fill out the paperwork for a working visa? Because when that expires, you're out. And if you don't have one, see ya. Even our friends are like that. The friends of our country.
You're right in saying that. I like your level democratic approach to that. These are there are restrictions. There's things. I lived in Australia for 12 years. You know that.
Right.
My wife and I was a permanent resident, but I had to go through the song and dance, and she did too. Ash had to do that with coming to America. But talking about Ellis Island, I've been there to Ellis Island and Statue of Liberty and whatnot.
Right. Where we got our birth control devices.
Yeah.
And so wild and crazy guy, Steve Martin.
At Ellis Island, the way they approached everybody was like, "Oh, you're coming from Norway. Oh, your name is Johansson. Well, now it's Johnson." Right? It just kind of.
I had a grandpa joke that was told me when I was a little kid. Some guy met with a Chinese guy that was an immigrant to the United States, and he's a citizen now. And his name was Sam Ting. And no, it's the other way around. He met a Norwegian guy, and his name was Sam Ting. And he said, "How on earth did you get the name Sam Ting? As you were born in Norway?" And he goes, "Well, I was there in line at Ellis Island." And he said, "There's a Chinese man in front of me. They asked his name." And he said, no. See, I'm mixing it all up. It's been like 60 years since I heard this joke. He said, "There's a Norwegian guy in front of him, and his name was, now I'm not remembering it. Okay, I'm just going to cut to the punchline because I totally screwed up that joke." But he said he was in line, and there was a Chinese man in front of him who gave his name as Sam Ting. And the Norwegian guy, they said, "What's your name, sir?" And he goes, "Sam Ting." And, something like that. But I don't know why it would be the same thing if it was a Chinese guy. So I've totally screwed up the grandpa joke. That's it. I'm not a grandpa yet, so I couldn't tell that one. By the way, Morgan Snow says, "Name me one other country where you can jump the border and be so welcome." And might I add, Morgan Snow, where you can jump the border, be welcome, get public benefits, get a cell phone, get hotel rooms, get what was it that some of the benefits for some people across the border? You get health care, you get because as the United States, we of course care about people, and so we want to make sure they're taken care of. They don't just come over here and have to sit in a box on a corner somewhere. And so we put them up, we help them out. But do you know how much money taxpayers spend supporting illegals in this country? Or maybe the more genteel way to say it is the undocumented migrants. You could say the illegal migrants. They're illegal only in the sense that they are not legal citizens, yet they're reaping benefits of legal citizens. So does that mean we are citizens of the world and therefore we must take care of everybody? I think to a certain extent you can do that, but you can give a helping hand. But what has happened at our southern border, as I was going off what Matthew Sainsbury said, Donald Trump wanted to shut out the Mexicans. No, he didn't. That's a slam on Donald Trump from the left, trying to make you think one thing about his personality. He hates migrants, he hated Mexicans, and he was trying to find a way to shut them out. No, he was trying to find a way to better regulate the border. And because you can't just wander into the United States and take up citizenry or take up residency without going through formal structure. And right now, the big gaping hole is our southern border. Because what did they say? We had something like, in the last year, several million undocumented migrants, illegal aliens, if you will, crossing over at the border, because the border is porous. It's open. And there's got to be a regulation there, especially you listen to people who live there, who are residents of the United States, from legal migrant residents to United States citizens born here. You'll listen to that, and they all say, look, we got people coming across our yards, our land, stealing our stuff, there's no control on the border. So you have to have control on the border. This is one of the responsibilities of the president of the United States, is border control. And so there you go. Lewis Boyce says, I want to hear Ruben's thoughts on the border.
This country is evolving.
Yeah.
And through our mistakes and failures, and it's necessary like anybody's life. But they try to make a New England here. They try to make a new France, a new Spain, a new Germany, a new Amsterdam.
Right.
And they
I like New Amsterdam.
Yeah.
I want a hamster in every pot.
They ran out. So they had to rely on Native American people. And, just to say this, to say that the Latino people, the Hispanic culture are one of the hardest working people in this country. They do the jobs that nobody wants to do. And it's difficult.
Very true.
Can I interject a thought in there?
Sure.
I'm not asking permission. That was more, I'm going to interject.
Go ahead.
When I was working in roofing, I had a friend who had a roofing company, and I was out in Utah, first Wyoming, then went to Utah for several months a few years ago to try to earn a little extra money, and work for a roofing company. I was the front end. I was the guy who would go knock on the door and say, hey, you've got hail damage, blah, blah, blah. We all know the routine. And so we had a Mexican crew that worked for us. All of our roofing crews were Mexicans. And the guy in charge, the guy who owned the Mexican crew, was Mexican. And he had become a naturalized citizen. He was a citizen of the United States. He drove a truck that's worth more than my house. He had a pickup truck that was $150,000. Well, my house is more than 150, but his truck was a $150,000 truck. He goes, yeah, man, look at my truck. He says, this is a great truck. He says, I could not have had this truck 10 years ago in Mexico. He says, now I'm here. He says, I love the opportunity in America. And now, so I was talking, I had somebody, I took a picture of the house, and the whole Mexican crew is up on the roof, and they're singing. They're up there singing, and they're carrying shingles. They're, hey, whatever in Mexican. And they're singing away, and I had my camera. I was inspecting the job site, and I said, hey, guys. I said, everybody wave at me. And so I held up the camera, and they all go, hey, and they're all waving. And I put that picture.
Half of them fall off the roof because they're distracted.
What's that?
Said half of them fell off the roof because they were distracted.
Hey, whoa. No, those guys were agile up there. I got to tell you, they did stuff. They were like nailing shingles on the edge of the roof.
Roofers
no pelts,
are
no
like
nothing, no
billy
rope.
goats.
And they're
can
leaning
walk
over
on
the
any
side, and I'm
incline.
going like, dude, on a slope, and you're leaning over the side, and I'm like, dude, I'd have died already. But so they all waved, and I posted that on my Facebook at the time. And I go, look at our fantastic Mexican crew. I said, they really inspire me. They're all happy. They're up there singing. They're roofing. They'll have that roof done in a day. And somebody had to post in there that, yeah, well, they're being oppressed by the United States. And, they just, and all this, and you're oppressing them, and you're showing their pictures. And I'm like, dude, I'm not oppressing anybody. So I did a little, as a result of that, the next morning, I got the, not the owner of the company, but one of the foremen before him, and his name was Alejandro or something like that, Ali or Alex, we were calling him. And I said, "Hey, do you mind if I film you for a second? I want to ask you a couple of questions about how you feel about what you're doing here." He said, "Sure, man." Just like that, "Sure, man." And so I'm talking, and I say, "So, how would you answer the charge that you are here in the United States working for the man, and you get nothing?" And then he goes, "Oh, dude, that is so off." He says, "I love the United States." He says, "I come here because you know what? I want to own a $150 truck too." And he says, "I want to have my own bit." I said, "What's your goal?" He says, "My goal is to become a citizen and own my own roofing business." And he says, "This is what I want to do." And now that was about 4 years ago, maybe closer to 5. I think he may well be, if he's not already, he made it. But Alejandro, and he said, "No," he says, "that's all wrong." He says, and what he said without having the terminology that we use, he didn't use this terminology, but he was saying, that's your political side that wants to politicize what we're doing. And he says, "No," he says, "No, I don't agree with any of that." He says, "None of us are here for that reason." He says, "We're all here to make a living, and we're all here to want to become citizens. We love the United States because we have opportunity here, and we want to become citizens. We want to have our own company." And I said, "That's fantastic."
I want to build off that.
What's
So
that?
that is the exact same as the people that freak out about the Braves or the Redskins or the whatever as a sports team
Washington
name.
Redskins.
It's not led by Native American groups saying we are offended. It's led by guilt-ridden white people who are normally Democrats that think, "Oh, I have all this money and I have to feel guilty for having all this money."
Right.
And so I will blame these people and say, "How dare you name your sports team this? What, when you're working off the oppressed, Native American, blah blah blah." And I don't think, and then you've said yourself, you're not offended by that. It's in many ways, it at least you can say, yeah, we are fierce, proud warriors, and that represents, that name represents who we are and what
you two talk for a minute. I'll be right.
Yeah, no, I have to spin off that.
Yeah, feel free.
Dave, you're right in the sense of, I tell people I was a mascot for the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. Their basketball 1998 North Dakota champions, and I was on TV and I was in my regalia. I wasn't being a goofball and woo, I wasn't doing that. I was just being real.
Yeah.
And so saying that to say this, I tell people Native Americans have a lot more things to worry about than these names.
Yeah.
They're poverty stricken. There's a plight. They're trying to just survive like the Latino culture or any other culture in that way. So they're not politicizing. They're not worried about that. At one time, there were groups like the Elks Lodge or the Moose Lodge, but they used native names. The Seminoles, the Shawnee Club, they're honoring the native people and mimicking them, wanting to do that, recognizing them in that sense. And people don't realize that as well, that initially it was to honor. It wasn't to defame or be PC in that way, like we're so sensitive now. And Scott, I'll tell you something when Scotty comes back. So yeah, I totally get it. It's people's guilt-stricken concepts that they're it's got to be this way, and you can't say that. And as we were talking earlier, I don't think you bowed out, but like Mel Brooks, Blazing Saddles, you can't have a show like that. Yeah, no. It's too strict now. You can't say those words. You can't say, the N word. You can't say they're who they are and what they are. But Mel Brooks is Jewish, and he made fun of everybody. I mean, And I think we need to kind of get back to that, to say, let's not have such a sensitive skin in that sense. But yeah, so Scotty, I wanted to say this, and I was going to say it to Dave. I took a picture. You said you took a picture of the Mexican culture. Hey, Professor. And I took a picture with my God rest his soul, my dad, my brother, my other brother, and myself. And we, our wives made fun of us by saying, wow, you look like 4 Chinese guys. So with that picture, I named all of us. My name was, I said, these are our Chinese names, if you think so. My name is On Too Long. My brother has a gambling problem, so we call him, and he never wins, Win One Soon. And and my other brother is One Dumb Guy. And then my father was Something Wong.
Something Wong.
Something Wong.
Nice.
But just kind of like a Mel Brooks thing. I'm not making fun of Asian.
Well, that was like the old Indian name joke, which is so improper nowadays.
Oh yeah.
Grandmother, how do we get our names? Well, when your grandfather was born, his mother looked out the teepee and saw a sunrise and called him Golden Sun. And then she goes through a whole litany of names. Your uncle was a great hunter, and we called him Wild Bear. And she goes, why do you ask me this question, shitting dog? Because it was supposed to be I'm really bad on my jokes this morning. It's supposed to be the first thing you'd see out the teepee door in the morning.
I've heard the same thing, but the punchline was, why do you ask 2 dogs fucking?
Yeah, that was it. That was the original.
So you gotta laugh at yourself. Life's too damn serious, and make fun and joke. And so I mimic my stuff up on Mel Brooks, Don Rickles, the Dean Martin roasts.
Hey, Beth Kirkham.
I love that.
So those are some of the best, Ruben, and you guys. I heard you guys talking about
get rid of the banner. I can't see.
And it brought to mind, I was born in Southern California back in the 50s, and I spent my first 28 years there. Then I spent 9, what I refer to affectionately as seasons, in Chicago. And then I moved to Atlanta and spent 21 years there. And now I'm out in the Four Corners. And I have to say that once I moved from Southern California, everywhere I went, I felt like an immigrant. I felt like there was a whole new culture when I moved to Chicago, a whole new culture when I moved to Atlanta, a whole new culture when I moved out here to the Four Corners. And you were talking, Scotty, about the work that the immigrants were doing and how proud they were. When I moved to Atlanta, I bought this contemporary house. It was 3.5 levels. It had all these angles and stuff on it. And it was a wood siding and it needed to be painted. So I'm always, the kind of person that says, I want to service and I want to work with the local people. So I went and got quotes and got a bunch of contractors, a bunch of good Southern folks, the guys that, are real nice to you on the facade, and they've got a knife behind their back waiting to stab you, which was kind of I was warned about before I actually moved down to Atlanta. And the first 3 guys I got were, local boys, good old Southern boys, and they were absolute shit. And then I hired a Mexican crew to come in and do the house, and they were the best. They did the best work. They were the most reliable, the most professional. And I'm thinking to myself, if this country has gone through any kind of decline, we've done it to ourselves. It's not because of anyone else that's come in. It's not because of anything other than our own decline in accountability, responsibility, integrity, having a sense of self that has value. And I think that's what we actually see in the majority of people who are immigrants, right? So
Yes.
when I moved to Chicago, I was like, holy shit, I can't understand what these people are saying half the time.
In Chicago.
In Chicago, right? And
you lived in California when California was what we all envisioned California to be.
I've
Does that
asked,
make sense?
absolutely.
So,
I've been asked many times, what would you describe as your idyllic growing up environment? And it was Southern California in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I mean,
Yeah.
right.
We drank from the water hose, and it was
after
awesome.
that. It changed after that. My vision before I moved to Hollywood, my vision of what California was like is from films from the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a visual image of what to expect.
Yes.
When I got there in the late 80s and early 90s, it was not there.
No.
And I was extremely disappointed. Of course, I lived in Pollywood, so you
started in the hole.
yeah. I went right into it. But so I had a visual image of New York as being gray and dismal and very unfriendly. And I went out there and had a totally different experience. Hold on, I got an alarm going off.
Sorry about that. My a screen popped up and I was getting feedback. Sorry about that.
My experience in New York, of course, it was after 9/11. But my experience in New York was everybody was so friendly, and every little neighborhood was like a small town. They all knew everybody that lived in their neighborhood,
the boroughs,
and everybody who was visiting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because we know everybody who lives here, so you don't live here, so you're visiting. And they were super friendly. If they can I help you find anything? Oh, I'm trying to find such. Oh, it's 4 blocks that way and 2 blocks to the. It's like, oh, thank you. The
only stereotypical thing I ran into in New York City, and we were down in one of those. It'd be like approaching Times Square in that neighborhood type of area, with all the little shops, the old shops all along the strip there. And I was with Guardian Photo, and we'd been purchased. We were the nation's second largest, next to Kodak, photo finisher. And we're talking back in the early 90s. And we were visiting one of the clients that we had in New York. And so I went out with one of the sales guys, and he's visiting all his different clients. And there was a camera shop you could go to, and you get all your film, your pictures developed there and stuff. And they owned a chain of stores around, and they were all Jewish. They were very Jewish. They were not Hasidic. They were Orthodox. So they wore the little yarmulke, and all the men were dressed in white shirts, not necessarily a tie, with a vest, and they'd have the prayer shawl on underneath the vest, so all the tassels hung out under the vest. And they were very stereotypical. And because we walked in, and the guy I was with was Roger, and he goes, well, he says, Roger, welcome to the shop today. I'm glad you stopped by. He says, what are you going to do for me today? What deals do you have for me today? and Roger would tell him. He'd say, well, I could do this and this and this. He goes, oi, he says, Roger, I got 6 kids. He says, what am I going to do with a lame deal like that? I need more. I need more from me. Come on, sit back, impress me. And he'd cross his arms, and he'd rock in his chair. And it was just great. It was all very stereotypical, but I also saw those guys were very tongue-in-cheek with it too. The Jewish guys, they knew they were stereotypical. They knew they were New Yorkers mixed with the Yiddish, but they were very comical, these guys, to listen to them. But it was so stereotypical at the same time.
That's how Sid was up at SR Harris when I was.
Oh my God.
When I was doing all my sewing stuff, and I was running all that. And I would go in and I'd say, Sydney, what can you do for me today? I said, I got to do these Royal Guard customs. I need a lot of red wool. And he's like, oh, I can give it to you for $34 a yard. I would say, what am I, nobody to you? Can I do nothing for you?
He'd say things like, he'd know you by your first name, because we always went in there and got fabric for costuming and stuff. And kilts. We'd buy kilt fabric, 9 yards a shot, so people could do great kilts. And he'd say, we do the same thing you did. We'd say, can you give me a better deal than that? $34 a yard. I said, holy crap. Can you get anywhere near $12 a yard? And he'd go, "Oi, what are you killing me here?" He says, "You're killing me." He said, "I got a family." Sid was the same way.
Being in New York here, living, and I'm 50 miles north of the city, but having been to a nice Jewish deli, doing magic tricks there for the Mexican crew, that was our cooks in a Jewish deli. But
that sounds like a very inclusive environment.
Yeah, I live in Warwick, and it's I'm not trying to be anybody but just me, but I kind of stick out. So
I got it.
I walk into the pub, or I walk into the deli, or I walk into the grocery store. I feel like Norm from Cheers. Hey, Ruben.
Hey, Ruben. Yeah.
It's like, hey,
sometimes you want a grocery store where everybody knows your name.
Yeah, that's it.
One of the things, going back to my little journey across the states that I constantly ran into, was when I would immigrate to another city, another state in the U.S., people would try to figure out where I was from because I didn't have an accent. Right. And I'd say, well, I'm actually a native Californian, and we don't have accents. And this is before the Valley Girl shit.
You must be west. You must be from west of the Mississippi,
right? But the other thing was, in Chicago was the first time that I had the real cultural experience in the enclave motif. In other words, in Chicago, there's an Irish community, there's an Italian community, there's a Chinese community, there's a Polish community, and they all live kind of together in neighborhoods. So if you went into any of these ethnic neighborhoods, I mean, you felt like you had stepped into another country.
Yeah, walk into Chinatown.
Well,
I was going to say,
it was
awesome.
With the exception of San Francisco with Chinatown, that doesn't really happen west of the Mississippi.
Correct.
Seattle too. Seattle.
And you would think that down in Southern California that we would have, Chinatown. Some of that little ethnic enclaves and little communities. And we had, we had our Chinatown and a lot of Mexican, a lot of Spanish influence and so
black.
forth.
But
and a lot of black. But we didn't, in Chicago, it was like these really defined areas of, here's all the Italians, here's all the Irish, here's all the Polish. And
New York is very much that way.
And one of the things that was, sad was I lived on the south side, down where the 80 and the 94 met, just right at the end of Lake Michigan. And it was a place called South Holland, which was all Dutch. And it was this little community. We all had little wooden shoes on their houses, little windmills in the yard.
Little wooden shoes.
Yeah, it was crazy. Little but if you went up north where the 94 went north and just on the south side of Chicago, the very south side, at 115th and Martin Luther King, that was as black and as and seriously dark as you could get. That community was trashed. And when you would listen to the people on the news and the aldermen and all these people, talking about the problems with the black community, all you had to do was to go to 115th and Martin Luther King, and you could see what they were talking about. And there was a serious difference in the way that people who had gotten into these ethnic enclaves took care of their community. You went to an Irish community and it was spick and span and green as shit.
Right.
You went to a Chinese, it was noodles and chop suey everywhere, but it was clean and it was organized. Same thing with the Italians. But my God, you got down there to the black community and it was trashed.
Why is that? Why do you suppose that was?
I think there was a whole bunch of things that went into that. But, and this is back in I moved to Chicago in 85, 86. And so I spent 86 through 94 there. And it was really, to me, this is when Mayor Daley, I think, was still one of the
Mayor Daley
out there. And there was a lot of corruption stuff going on in the government in a way that I think is very similar to today.
What?
Yeah, yeah.
That ain't
Very
your
similar
Chicago
today,
way.
but it was different for that time.
Scotty,
Yeah.
I will say this: coming from the poorest place in America, the Pine
Yeah.
Ridge Indian Reservation, and what Professor is talking about I've worked South Chicago in an all-black African school, my Native American shtick, and what it comes down to, being poverty-stricken, is poverty is not necessarily in the wallet or the purse.
Right.
Poverty is here.
Yeah.
It's
in the
here.
mind.
So you think it, then you are it, and that's why, all
Now,
these different. They
this
supported
is
each
not
other.
the United States I'm talking about, but when I was first in Cairo with John Ward, Cairo, Luxor, God, that was 10 years ago now when I first stepped foot there in Egypt. And everything was dirty. Everything was, you'd go downtown, it was dirty. And I'm not talking just dirt from, obviously you're going to get dirt in the air,
It's a
the
desert.
sandstorm.
There's lots of
But there was
sand.
garbage everywhere. The canal in Luxor was full of garbage. And this is the canal where they draw their drinking water, where everything. And it was just, I took pictures of it. It was literally mounds of garbage along the banks of the canal. And I said to John, what is it? What is it that people just can't come out in their front yard or in front of their shop with a broom and sweep off their front of their shop and pick up the garbage? Mostly water bottles everywhere, because nobody drank the water. You all bought bottled water. And John said it the best way, like what you just said, Ruben. He says it's all national pride, and it's all pride in self. He says they don't have it. And he said it's absent. It's poverty here in the mind. And nobody cares because there's an apathy about it.
But
And
think of America in the early 70s and late 60s. I remember just trash everywhere, and that's when they really started the Clean Up America movement. And Ruben, I can't think of his name, the Native American who did the commercial for them, that I want to say it's Chief Joseph something, with the tear rolling down his cheek.
Iron Eyes Cody. That's
Iron Eyes Cody.
Who was really Italian.
Is he? Is he
was
really?
Italian? But he portrayed it so well that he believed it. He believed it himself that he was Native American. Doesn't bother me, but that was, you're right. The tear, and I remember that the trash and the garbage
and suddenly everybody was picking up trash. You would see people on the side of the highway picking up trash, and you would and now the thought of someone just throwing their McDonald's bag out the window, people behind them will stop and pick it up and throw it back in their car.
There was a magazine ad I saw, and I think it was also on television. It showed a roadside with grass, just a highway, and it showed a bag of McDonald's all used up, and the cup and the fry container, and it was all laying around. It was garbage on the side of the road. And it was a McDonald's ad, and it said, "We love seeing our names spread around, but not like this." That was the same way.
Yeah,
that was the same thing. I remember in one episode of Mad Men, and I think it's just the way people thought back then. An episode of Mad Men, early 1960s advertising agency people, and the lead role, the guy who played was Don Draper. Was the creative director of an ad agency. They were all fairly well-to-do. And he's with his family, and they're having a picnic out in the park. Just like a shot out of the early 1960s. And a shot of the wonderful family sitting out on a blanket in the park, having lunch, picnic, and the birds singing and all this. And they show this little vignette. I don't think there was any conversation, just what the family was doing that day. And when they're all done, and she's in the little, like poodle dress, and he's in the, the shirt and the tie loosened up, and they're all, very 1960s, beautiful family with their two kids. Well, at the end of this little picnic scene, the music's playing. They stand up and they take the corners of the blanket, and the blanket's full of garbage from the picnic. They take the corners of the blanket and they shake it. out onto the grass and roll up the blanket, and they get in the car and go. And nothing's ever said. There's no statement made about it in the show or anything. It was just saying, this is the way we were not long ago. This is what we did. And maybe some people were picking things up, but the conservation movement grew out of, or the ecological conservation movement grew out of the fact that we didn't pay attention to that
and thought nothing of it.
And
yeah,
your wheels are turning.
The mindset of that time, and I feel fortunate being born in 1971 and I'm 51 winters to have seen the point where we didn't lock our car doors. We didn't lock our homes.
Yeah.
I remember that time where it was just, you didn't think about it. You didn't want to go. Yeah.
You know, even in the 60s and 70s in Southern California, that's where the original liberal ideology was given birth, right? And the original was, leave us alone, screw the man, and free love. And those were the main tenets of the original liberal approach. And I remember writing.
And the man wanted to be screwed. I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was we were starting to get marijuana and drugs and the whole free love thing, and it was like a utopia. For those of us that were, coming into our teens going, oh, what's this shit? This is great. And the music was, obviously, much better than it is today. But the one thing that I remember is I had a paper route, like a lot of high school kids, right? So I'd have the bags on my 5-speed Stingray, and I'd, run out at 5 in the morning. And
there's a way to rig those straps across the banana,
that's right. And there was a way to fold the paper and get the rubber band around it, get them all stacked in there.
If you didn't have rubber bands, you used the poor man's fold, and you fold it and you tucked it in.
For you kids that don't know what he's talking about, he's talking about one of these.
That's right.
I have it's what I carry my costume in, but it's an old paperboy sack.
But I would go out and in the mornings, and I'd throw my paper, and then my big treat at the end of the route was there was a Winchell's Donut House. And that was, the big donut thing in Southern California back then. And I'd go there and get me a Bear Claw and a big Coke. And I'd dip that Bear Claw in that Coke. And that was, it was just it was a reward of the highest order. But I remember that even riding my bike around the neighborhoods, and I was in Downey, California, where I grew up in my teens. And that's where Richard and Karen Carpenter came from. I went to had the same music instructor that they did at Downey High School. James Hetfield from Metallica was a few years after me. We had a real lucky musical gene that ran through that area back then. But I remember, throwing the papers and riding my bike, and the streets were clean. In fact, the only thing that we really did that was noticeably trashing something was TPing somebody's house.
Yeah, we did that, and we egged people. You can't egg them.
Yes,
anymore. I can't egg people anymore. It'll cost you $14 for a dozen eggs.
Did you have a Stingray with a banana seat? And
I had the banana seat. Had the sissy bar.
Sissy bar.
The whole nine. You had the extended front. It was a 5-speed Murray.
Oh, awesome! She had the
metallic purple.
But did you have bolts holding your tires on, or wing nuts?
Oh,
no, I had bolts, but I also had playing cards with clothespins.
I was just going to say that. Playing cards.
That was my engine.
That's right.
I had the wide slick tire on the back so it had the fat slick without any knobs or anything, and then grooves on the front wheels,
Yes.
So on a rainy road, I was all over the place, but
oh yeah. But so fast forward, a good 50 plus years, and toilet paper becomes this rare commodity, and now eggs are expensive. Right. So I'm fortunate in the class where I remember when that shit was so cheap, we threw it at people and on people's houses.
Yeah. We wasted it.
For us, it was
by the way, there's nothing like egging somebody's house and then turning to run right into the guy who is 6'5" and as broad as a barn. What you boys
Yep.
up to? Hey, I got a bucket and some water and soap I'm going to introduce you to. Oh, yeah, that was an embarrassing moment. At least he didn't tell our parents.
You know, back when the bikes didn't have handle brakes, you had to cock
Yep.
your leg back to
Yeah.
Yeah.
skid
back
it up
pedal.
the pedal.
I lived the house where I lived.
Spin that back end around with that. Hit the riding down the hill, hit my brakes and do a nice fishtail and leave a big skid mark on our brand new driveway. The old man was not happy about that.
The alternative to that was going down, hitting your brakes to leave a fishtail, tipping over, and getting road rash from one side of your head down to your ankle.
And you got up and you walked it off.
Yeah,
you didn't.
I got the worst.
You know, run to the hospital, and you certainly weren't going to call your parents because they were going to say, "Walk it off, go back."
I got the worst road rash from skateboarding. So I would be skateboarding down the hill, and there'd be one tiny little rock that had a wedge shape, and it would find that front wheel and just lock everything up, and then you were airborne, and your skateboard was a half a block behind you, and you were like,
"Yeah, pretty much."
So right next to the neighborhood that I grew up in, I don't know, you've probably at some point seen pictures of the Los Angeles Aqueduct.
Yes.
And it was this massive concrete structure that ran down through Southern California where we typically would get our water. Well, this thing was dry most of the time, and it was like a quarter of a mile behind my house. It was right there. So that was where we rode our bikes because you had this great big slant and then you had this big flat area and you could ride for miles and be completely uninterrupted. But what we used
did the water come rushing in there? Was it like, oh my God, we got to watch out? It's like an oncoming train?
No.
Or was it just like
never saw we saw like little tributary kind of things running down the middle of the big concrete flat metal piece.
Right.
But never saw any kind of, major floods.
Like rushing torrent coming in.
No, nothing like that.
Where I lived in Glendale was about a half a block away from what they call the LA River, which isn't really a river, but that section is where they shot the Terminator stuff.
Yeah.
With the semi and everything. Okay, so it's right there. And I don't think even on a rainy day, I mean, there was always, so there's the slope, and then there's a flat level, and then there's a channel in the center of that. There would be water sometimes in the channel, but I never saw water flow out of that channel.
You remember the CO2 cartridges that you used to have in the air guns and BB guns and stuff?
Air pellets,
Yeah, so what we used to do, we had a lot of those. A lot of the people that were in the neighborhood and the people I went to school with were, fairly... you would call them conservative today. They were gun-loving type folks. Well, we had a lot of CO2 cartridges. So when they get spent, we would saw the end off. And then you remember the books you could get? Used to be able to get a match. I think you can still get them. But back then, matchbooks were like the deal. And so what we would do is we'd rip the tip off of each match and we'd pack them into these CO2 containers. And then we would take a straw and tape the straw to the CO2 container. And then we'd take 1,000 foot of string and we put the string through the straw with the CO2 container. And you'd have one match sticking out the end of that packed CO2 container with match heads. And we'd light it. And one person would be on the end that would light it. And then one of us foolish idiots would be on the other end with the catcher's mitt and the string.
Yeah.
And that was part of our entertainment out there in the aqueduct. We have to do it. Yeah, there you go. We'd have to do it down in the aqueduct because, we didn't want anybody to find out, we were down there blowing shit up, including
my kids would see these for the first time and they go, what are those? I go, watch this.
Oh, he's a wizard! He's a wizard!
He's a wizard!
Have you seen the meme with the? You remember the rolls of caps, the red caps?
Yeah.
Those have been some of those memes have been going on. As if you know what these are, then you had a real childhood.
You had a real childhood.
So I got a quick story about this. So my oldest brother, who was born in the 50s, all the rage back then, you know, because Roy Rogers is on
all
those
the rage back then, being born in the 50s. Yeah.
No, but was the cowboy stuff, right? So for Christmas, he got chaps and 6 guns and a hat and a vest and the whole bit, right? The whole outfit.
Yep.
Mom and Dad had to go to some meeting. They had this little old lady babysitting John. John was all of maybe 4 or 5.
John Potter?
And he had his 6 gun, and he had gotten 10,000 caps
Nice.
for Christmas. And they came home, and the house was littered with little red pieces of paper because he would shoot it and tear it off and shoot it and tear it. And he had his 2 guns, and the house was just completely covered in red confetti.
What did the house smell
and
like?
He was out of ammunition. and she was just sitting in the rocking chair.
Out of ammo.
Yeah, that was one of the things on those memes, is that as soon as I saw a picture of those red caps, I could smell it.
Oh,
was
yeah.
Instant sensation. I smelt that. And I went, oh, shit. I mean, you think about, time travel, right? And travel in the mind, music. You can listen to a song and, I mean, blink, you're back there, wherever that was. Smells, sounds, tastes.
Those voice, them's fighting words.
So you could take that cap and lay it out and take a penny and drag it across it.
Drag it across.
And I can't tell you how many times I had one explode right there at the tip of my thumb and leave a scorch mark under the thumbnail that would hurt for weeks.
I remember just using my thumbnail just to scratch them and pop them. And you would have to get that light brown and then with a white sulfur
ring around it.
Ring around it, and you're like, and now I just walk around sniffing my thumb all day.
Yeah. Kids today, they don't know what they're missing.
Yeah, they don't know what they're missing.
The interesting thing, to bring this up, I'm not getting serious with this at all, but I remember we played Cowboys and Indians. Lewis Boyce brought up screw that cowboy sissy stuff. We played Army. Well, we played Army too.
We did too. That
the neighbor kid.
Oh yeah.
When I was 5 or 6, he would come over all the time with Army belts and helmets and stuff. Apparently, his dad's old gear from, let's see, this would have been 1965. Could have been World War II stuff, for all I know. And we'd play Army all the time. And then we played Cowboys and Indians too, because we got the little guns with the holsters, the little.
Yeah.
You try to spin them. The little Lone Ranger was what I got. The Lone Ranger set. He was silver or chrome.
And Winchesters.
And they didn't have
the little plastic bullets,
orange tips on them, because we all knew they were toys. And, so we got those, and we played Cowboys and Indians. But back then, the Cowboys were the good guys, and the Indians were always the bad guys. That's the way we were raised to think. That was what you saw in the TV shows and the movies. He was the cowboy. He's walking down along on his horse with his friend, and you'd hear from the background and thundering hoof beats. And the Indians would come out to try to kill them for no reason at all. And so that's what we learned.
We didn't understand the reason, but there was a reason.
Oh, there was a reason. They didn't tell you the reason, but
I've got some trivia.
I understand what that reasoning was until a little later in life.
I've got some trivia for you. What was the name of the Lone Ranger's horse?
Silver.
What was the name of the Lone Ranger's dog?
Dog?
Don't know.
Bullet.
Oh,
I didn't know he had a dog.
What was the name of his Indian companion?
Tonto.
Which is really Spanish for tonto, which means stupid.
Or Japanese for a short knife.
There you go. Also, what was the name of Tonto's horse?
Oh, Scout.
Very good. Hey, you passed the test.
Yeah. Well, what did Kimosabi mean?
Kimosabi means it's actually Ojibwa, Anishinaabe. Kimosabe.
I heard that it meant something like, "You think this is a great name, asshole."
Something like that. It's derogatory.
Stupid white man.
Is it derogatory?
Yeah, well, that's what he called. See, the Indian Tonto called the
Yeah.
Lone Ranger.
Kimosabi. We must get the bad guy.
Talks too much, or like I tell people my Indian name, of course, is Fast Horse, Tashunke Luzaha, but I also say my second Indian name is Walking Eagle. Why? Because I'm too full of shit to fly.
There you go. There it is, Walking Eagle.
Going back to playing Army,
bold and noble.
A neighbor 3 or 4 doors up from me, he was quartermaster for the Minnesota National Guard. And so I had BDUs, I had all the web system, I had a steel pot and liner, I had everything. So when we played Army, I had the full kit, head to toe. And our neighborhood was on the north edge of town. And so there was a huge vacant lot field, like with a small grove of trees and a stream running through it on one end, and behind us another big huge vacant lot. And we had dug foxholes and trenches and all those. And when we played Army, we went out and we had
Mom and Dad always loved that in the yard.
Oh yeah.
Well, but these were vacant lots, big huge
foxholes in our yard.
Fields for us to play in. And so kids would come from all over the neighborhood, and we'd form 2 sides and play, and it was great. We had trenches and foxholes, and back then we had the toys. We had grenades that you could load with those red paper caps, so that when they hit, they would go off. And we had Tommy guns and 45s that all you could load those caps into, and everything was bang, 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 bang.
You know, one of my favorite pieces I had back then, Dave, you remember the green mess kit?
Yeah.
That little metal thing that had the handle that kind of clipped and kept the top and the bottom together.
Yeah.
You can still get those.
You pop that off and you had your cup and your spork and, and whatever else in there. Yeah.
I had an actual military issue one that I originally started out with their aluminum, and I had an aluminum mess kit and an aluminum canteen. And this quartermaster guy replaced all that with the new plastic ones, so they didn't clank and make a lot of noise. And the canteen was actually slightly larger.
I had my 2 buddies that I've mentioned that lived down at the end of the street from us in North Minneapolis, where I grew up. And Indians, that's how we knew them. We didn't even know the term Native American back then. American Indian, I think, started to come around in the early 70s. But we hung out all the time. And it was behind, they lived in the 4-plex apartment building down at the end of our street. And behind that whole side of the street, as I've mentioned many times, was all the woods. We called it the woods. And because it was all foresty, and it ran for 1.5 miles behind all the way down there. But on the other side of that was the busy Lyndale Avenue and the Mississippi River. And so we used to go play in the woods all the time. It was like being in the city, in the forest. And,
same here.
We never played cowboys and Indians. We were a little older when we got to know each other, 10, 11 years old, 12 years old. But we'd always go out there and shoot bow and arrow out in the woods. And that bow and arrow, one of the antics that we did, and Charlie showed me this, he goes, "Watch this, man." And he took shawang straight up in the air with the arrow. And we had to watch to see where it was going to come down and scatter.
Incoming.
So that was one of our fun things, is scattering out in the fields, the woods and the fields and all that. But those were also the guys that we this is how I grew up. These were the guys where we found the old, had to be from the mid-60s, a Buick, the hood of the trunk of a Buick. And it was discarded at past their apartment. On the corner was a lot with a big hill going down into the fields. And so we grabbed that, and we tied rope from one end to the other. We flipped it upside down because the hood goes this way and then swooped up. That's a toboggan. And that's what we used when we went sledding with Charlie and Delano. We went sliding on the hill next to their apartment building on the roof of an old Buick.
Just spinning off of what you said, Scotty, in regards to the bow and arrow. there was a society of Hidatsa Indian in North Dakota that in order to be a part of that society of men, they were called the Fly Society, like a little fly.
Yep.
And what they did was they would stand in a circle and they
Your
would
turn.
shoot their arrows and not move, whether you got hit or not. But that was your initiation.
Nice.
And the one thing that I remember about regaling from my childhood is you weren't really a boy unless you had a bow and arrow, a slingshot, or a jackknife. You know,
Or you could
Yeah,
add a
all
BB
those.
gun to that too. You had to have a
Yeah.
BB gun.
a BB gun. There you go.
Yeah.
I always said I was always a very good shot with a bow, and people say, "Where'd you learn?" I said, "My neighbors were Indians."
You know, and when I played Army with my white buddies, if we played Cowboys and Indians, I was the Indian, of course.
Mhm.
You weren't a
Or
rancher?
So
I was-
typecast.
I was
Typecast.
either an Indian or
No,
I
he was the casino owner.
the Chinese cook, Hop Sing.
Yeah.
Or
Sing, yes, from Bonanza.
if I played Army, then I was the Vietnamese or Korean or something.
Hey, I got all these helmets for you guys. Oh, Ruben, you get the rice hat. Yeah. Susie Q says we sharpened our sticks on concrete. We had sharp arrows. Well,
Yep.
Yeah.
Susie, we carried around knives. We always
Yeah.
had knives.
Hey, we sharpened our knives on the concrete too.
That was the
I mean,
cool
concrete
thing. You
was
had to
a
have
very
knife.
very versatile weapon and tool making surface. I mean,
we would also scrape it and then we would harden it with a flame or some kind of lighter so it got really hard, you know.
Oh, sure. You gotta one up us white guys and say with the Indian way of doing things. Yeah, we'd sharpen them on concrete. And you go, well, like we went out and got the red clay and we put red clay on it and we would let it dry hard and it became. And it's like you got a medicinal use for that too, I'm sure. And then we'd lick it and we'd rub it on a wound and it would heal. And
or just rub dirt on it
You know?
like a road rash. Just put dirt on it.
Yeah.
You know?
we
it's
always
actually
had
used as an
knives when I was a
aphrodisiac
kid.
in some communities.
I don't
The
have
one thing
of the
I
knives
miss from
here, but I
the
got
one thing I miss from there's many things I miss.
a
But
little
Wow.
machete.
one of the most memorable components of growing up in Southern California was the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, I'll
And
bet.
I was,
Were you a
a
surfer
half
boy?
hour. Well, I didn't surf. I was the guitar player, right?
Oh, there you go.
So
There you go.
you take your guitar down to Redondo, Manhattan, Newport, Huntington Beach. I mean, that was the area that I was in. It was just on the coast. It was one awesome beach after another.
Yes.
And so you just going to the beach and sitting there with a 6-pack of Colt 45, grabbing a bonus Jack in the Box on the way in, and sitting around with some Meshuacan kind of thing that you were hoping was actual cannabis or marijuana, as they called it back then. And sitting on that beach, playing music with friends and getting a buzz on was just an absolute. I mean, I can feel like I was just there yesterday. And that was real magical for me. Between that and then going to the Angeles Crest is the mountain range that goes around LA, or at least around the north end of it. And that's where Arrowhead and Big Bear and all of that is. Not very high mountains. I think maybe 3,000 feet or something. I mean, they're really foothills. They're not really mountains. But the canyons. So we would either go to the beach and take our guitars and our drugs and our goodies, or we'd go to the mountains and take our guitars and our drugs and our goodies. And we'd go hiking and we'd find little creeks and, little places, and we'd just camp and we'd sit around and do psilocybin and chocolate mescaline and just sit there and have these amazing, peaceful, serene in nature experiences.
Rocky Mountain High.
I want to drink 4 Mountain Dews in a row.
Whoa. Well, I got to tell you, I lost after a few trips with that Colt 45. I had to switch it up. That shit just put a hurt on me big time. So I ended up being a Coors man. My dad used to drink Olympia. I don't know if you guys ever saw that beer.
Yes,
there was another one, Hams with the bear.
Hams, that was right here in Minneapolis.
Yeah,
you can still go to the old
Schlitz,
Hams Brewery in northeast Minneapolis. They had this fountain that would shoot up, and it was like, just a pillar. It was what it was like, and that's still there. It's now condos, but we used to go over there to their little park outside of Hams Beer.
I had a studio in there in the bottling building.
Maybe that was Grain Belt. Grain Belt was another one of those.
Yeah, I remember that. My dad used to be a Schlitz man, and when he hung over, he'd always have like a pint of to kind of get him back to normal. A pint of peppermint schnapps.
Oh,
yeah.
Right here.
Jägermeister.
The paranormal world. Chad Kalick. He's a movie maker and paranormal investigator and a lot of stuff. And the last time I was at the Queen Mary, which down in Long Beach, they would say in New York, but it's in California. And we were sitting on the Queen Mary, and he racked up. This was like 2009 or 2010, and he racked up a bunch of peppermint schnapps shots for us. And I was like, "Oh my God, dude!" And so I mean, they were good, but it was like
they weren't.
drinking toxified candy. And
people say they were good. They were never good.
One night I put a hurt on myself with a 6-pack of Old Milwaukee, the 16-ounce cans.
Yep.
And a bottle of Southern Comfort. Okay.
Wow.
And I was by myself in the house, and apparently, unbeknownst to me, at some point after consuming a fair amount of these things, I decided, and this is back in rotary dial phone era. This is 73, something like that, 74. And apparently, after consuming enough of these two wonderful liquids, I decided to call my girlfriends. And I think it was like a Saturday night or something, or, girls that I knew and so forth. And apparently, unbeknownst to me, my mind and my mouth decided to have conversations with not my girlfriends, but their mothers who answered the phone.
Oh my goodness.
And I proceeded to tell their mothers about all of the sex and all the crazy shit that I was doing with their daughters.
Here's to you, Mrs. Robinson.
Unbeknownst to me, right? Unbeknownst to me. So the next thing I know, after I started consuming this stuff, is I'm laying on the floor, leaning up against the wall, and the sun is coming through the window, and I feel like I've been hit by a truck. Right. And I'm just like, oh my God. And
Did
all of a sudden,
dads come and visit you?
No, all of a sudden my phone rings and it's girlfriend number one. Hello? What the fuck? I'm going, what are you talking about? Mom last night? You are nuts. There is no possible way. Click. A little while later, phone rings again. Next one. I'm like, you're nuts. And now I'm starting to think, holy shit. I must have done this, because I don't even remember thinking about it, let alone doing it. So that was my last Southern Comfort experience. I decided at that point there was
Southern
no way
Comfort
I was going to
not good.
No.
One of the ways I met Scotty was he approached me to be an Indian scout for the 42nd Highland Brigade.
We're going to play Cowboys and Indians.
Regiment.
You want to come
42nd Royal Highland
And also,
Regiment.
that's where I had my first Guinness through Scotty and the guys.
Hey, let's give the Indians some Guinness.
Let's all remember our first Guinness.
They called it bread in a can. Bread in a can.
Liquid oatmeal for breakfast.
Well, he showed me that cascading effect when you pour it into a glass. It does that.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. It's like art.
Not the land of sky blue waters, but the land of milky brown.
Yes, the land of milky brown cascades.
That's right. And also, he turned me on to single malt whiskey, which I love.
There you go.
Scotch.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, that blended stuff will screw you with your head. Drink the single
I got
malt
some blended scotch right here behind me.
No.
You got to go single.
It's Jameson.
Jameson's good.
Which is okay.
Jameson endures is like, if you got nothing else, you can, as long as you get an ice cube in it, it's doable. But you get a good
Jameson-
single malt.
There's
is-
only one blended that I'll drink, and that's the Royal Salute. So it's a Chivas product, and I don't normally drink any Chivas, but so when Elizabeth was born, they started setting casks aside, and when she was crowned queen, they blended a whiskey, and every year thereafter blended a bottle. I can't wait to try the new King's single malt, because it's going to be 57 years old before they bottled it.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's going to be some really awesome
See,
stuff.
I
But
like I'll drink Jameson blended with like 7-Up or Sprite. If you want a sweet like party drink, that's good, and that'll hammer you before you know it, because you're drinking a lot of it because it's sweet. But
So now
I
you've
won't do that with single malt Highland Scotch.
Now you've taken me back to my high
straight.
school days, and what we used to drink was Seagram 7
Oh boy.
and Verner's.
Oh,
Did you guys ever have Verner's? The
Yeah.
ginger
No.
ale
What's that?
kind of stuff?
no.
Yeah. It was big back then, and so it was Verner's and 7 is what we drank.
College. There used to be this
Miller's
beer called
Ginger
Max
Ale.
Beer.
Oh my God.
Okay. Max Beer, super cheap. I think you could get a case, like a literal case, for like $3. So cheap
Wow.
beer. And a product called Mad Dog 2020.
Oh yeah.
And we would mix them and make Mad Maxes.
No, you mixed them.
I remember
Oh, good Lord.
and Dave, this will ring funnier to you because you know who I'm talking about. At my some birthday party 20 years ago at my house in the pub downstairs, the 15th century looking pub. I had a big party, and Laszlo came over and brought a huge bottle of Camo 40. Now, we drank some of that, and I'm like, what? I looked at Laszlo and I said, what is this swill that you've served me? But so we've got a picture of us together with the Camo 40. I'm a purist, though, when it comes to beer or ales. You know, of course, I got, your Guinness Draft. Now that's in a can. I like it out of a bottle.
Notice
Have
how
you
they
had
keep
have
the
you
arm
had
reach away from
Boddingtons?
But
Scotty,
do
have
we
you
have
had
what?
Have you had Boddingtons?
I haven't had Boddington.
Ryan.
Boddingtons. I would use Boddingtons instead of the what do you make the black and tan is Guinness and Bass.
Yes.
So I swapped up and started using Boddingtons with the Guinness.
Boddingtons.
Oh
Ryan,
my God! You talk about a
Yeah.
creamsicle awesomeness. Whoa.
Ryan, to be fair, we flushed the toilet and rinsed it off really good.
Yeah, they rinsed it in the fresh water coming in. Yeah, that was at one of my famous birthday parties too. See, now I always threw a birthday party for myself because that was a way I could open my doors and have 100 people show up, and it was so much fun. And I told people, you don't have to bring gifts, nothing like that. We'll provide some munchies and things like that. If you want to bring some, that's cool. If you bring anything, I said, bring a bottle of single malt Highland Scotch to crack and open.
See,
And
I'm
so
with you
Which
there.
is why he has so much
bar up
Glenfiddich.
with a dozen different single malt Highland Scotches.
Scotty,
But, the plunger was a gift. Somebody brought that for me. He goes, Scotty, I think he brought a Scotch bottle. This was our old friend John. And he brought a bottle of Scotch, and then he brought me a plunger. And because he asked me what I wanted for my birthday. And I said, nothing, dude. And he pressed me, and I go, a plunger. I need a new plunger. And so he brought a plunger. It was brand new. We went and washed the store grime off of it and used that as my champagne cup all night.
Martini.
Martini.
Scotty has taught me about
Shaken,
Scotch.
not plunged and not stirred.
I'm more of a Scotch man than a whiskey man. I'll drink whiskey, but I did not know until I studied it from Scotty's perspective that whiskey is made from corn mash, and Scotch is made from rye. In that sense, and it's a lot smoother. Scotch for me is lots of Jameson's. It's just
Depends
nice.
on if it's peaty or oaky.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't do the Pete's. I have to do the
made
oak.
my heart flutter.
Yeah, Dave's
Just the mention of
oh.
Pete.
Oh,
The
you say the
smoky
word
goodness.
peach and oak. And I'm like, oh, that's like
I barely
Trump
made
or
it
DeSantis.
ashore. I barely made it ashore on my buddy's 16-foot sailboat back in the early 90s in Lake Michigan. And we took it out. We brought a 16-year-old Lagavulin with us and some
I've
gars.
got some 16-year-old Lagavulin. That's probably
And we got out there and the wind kicked up, the swells kicked up. We had like 3-foot waves, and a 16-foot sailboat with one mast and sail, on 3-foot waves is starting to get pretty hairy, especially when the wind's blowing. So we're out there. We've got half of this bottle done. We are just lit, and we're smoking gars and laughing our asses off. And all of a sudden,
let's
up.
see if we can make it to Africa.
Dean, my buddy who owns the boat, he's got me holding on to the rudder, and he says, and so I'm tacking on this wave, and we're trying to ride it and surf it. And we're feeling like all manly and sailorly and all this shit. And all of a sudden, the mast snapped off.
Nice.
It just snapped off the boat, went straight into the water, and because of the wind and the size of the sail, it took us and started spinning us around.
Nice.
So the sail was dragging in the water, and now so we're hammered. We're spinning around trying to hold on to our guard and figure out what the hell are we going to do out in the middle of Lake Michigan now.
There's a moral to this story somewhere, I'm sure.
Yes, but so the peat. So I had been traveling, fortunately, all over Europe and Asia, and my hosts were getting me introduced to local libations. So that's when I really became a single malt Scotch fan in Germany and France and England and Holland. And I mean, I was getting all the good stuff. And then I also became a beer snob when I found the Trappist ale and the Duval and the Triple. It was like, oh my God, these are like nectars of the gods. They were so incredible. So anyway, I become a rye cask single malt Scotch fan. Well, I hadn't had peat, really any good peat Scotch, and Dean was a Lagavulin fan, so he brought the 16-year-old Lagavulin. Well, that's peat, and halfway through the bottle, this major incident happens with the sail falling off, and we're trying to figure out how
to never drink a peaty Scotch again.
Oh, well, I was still we were having fun. We figured that we had a 2-horse motor, a little prop on it. That's how it took us 5 hours to get back into the harbor. But this is where the story ends. I am at this point now. We have finished that Lagavulin, and I'm relying on Dean to get us in because this is one of my first times on a little tiny sailboat.
Right.
And so he's getting us in, and I'm kind of like holding on. We pulled into the slip, and at that point, everything was spinning really hard, and I leaned over the side of that boat, and I hurled. And I said, okay, no more Lagavulin for me. I can't.
There are certain things I will not drink again. One of my first times I got really drunk, and I was in my early 20s. I drank, do you remember Inglenook wine?
Oh, yeah.
Inglenook. And it came in a carafe that had a top long, narrow, and then it down like this.
That was like Tyrolia was the same kind of thing.
I drank the whole thing one night in despair over something, and it was white wine. To this day, I cannot drink white wine. I was so
sick.
Sick is a good word for, I was going to say inebriated, but sick works. And I was sick for 2 days. And this is back in the day where I was a youth pastor, and you didn't drink alcohol. Alcohol was something you didn't do in our church. And I came to Sunday morning service thinking I could manage it. Looking good. I was sharp. Tweed suit coat, and the deep plunging V on the suit coats, that era, and tailored, and but I would turn my head to look, and the whole world would go. And I was like, oh my God. And I told everybody, I said, I think I got the flu today, because I couldn't tell them I was drunk. All the old guys in the church were like, yeah, you got the flu, right?
Yeah, we've seen that flu before.
You know what that looks like. So,
Yeah, and Professor, when I was in Germany with my second wife, Ash, we went back to Germany. That's where I had my first, and I love it still, Jägermeister.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It reminded me of what my mom would give us back in the 70s when you got sick with the flu or cold. They gave you Vicks Formula 44, which had alcohol in it.
Yeah, or I mean, my parents. I remember my grandparents. They were from the Midwest, Oklahoma and Kansas, and they would give us shots, and just say, okay, if you had an earache, they blew cigarette smoke in your ear, and they'd put the Vicks on the diaper, and they tied a little cloth diaper and pin it around your neck, and it would be on your chest, and they'd give you a shot, and it was usually some kind of schnapps or something that was kind of sweet. But I remember that shit just going, oh my God. Ruben, did you notice in your travels in Europe, one of the things I found, for example, I had an office in just north of Amsterdam for about 7 years. So I was over there quite a bit. And, over here, we hear, we see Heineken as, the Dutch beer. Heineken to them over there is like, it's like Budweiser here. They don't drink Heineken over there. They drink Orangaboom.
Yeah. Everybody exports their swill.
They export their swill. And the other thing that I noticed was that, like, the Jägermeister that I had in Holland didn't taste like the shit we get over here. It was actually good, or at least doable over there. So that was one of the things that
you get it at a drugstore, don't you, over there? Jägermeister sold at the drugstore?
Probably.
In Holland?
In Germany and in that area?
I think it might be, yeah.
When I lived in Australia, it's the same thing. They drank Budweiser. That was their big deal, export. But nobody drank Foster's. That was swill.
Right.
And I drank like a home craft beer called Cooper's, which was South Australian. And that was good. And their beer is potent. It's not like American. Like Coors is what we call out west potato water. Coors beer. So
I grew up on Coors and actually loved it. I couldn't drink Bud. The other one I couldn't drink was
never been a fan of Bud.
Miller. The Miller High Life. Remember that?
Miller was good. Champagne of beers. Yeah.
Yeah, the champagne of beers. Yeah,
that was decent. Yeah.
I could drink the Miller, the champagne of beers, and Coors, but I couldn't drink Bud. And
Old English 800 malt liquor.
Old English. Oh my God! One that I remember that I haven't been able to find anybody or any reference to it was Budweiser came out with a malt liquor back then around the Colt 45 days, and it came in a black can. And it had Budweiser in red, and it had the bird logo thing in gold.
Wow.
And it was Budweiser malt liquor. And it was, I remember it was in the 16-ounce cans. You could only get, Colt 45 only came in the 12-ounce in the 6-pack, I think.
I never liked malt liquor, and I never liked yellow beer that you could see through. I got a hard, fast rule. If it's yellow and I can see through it, I don't drink it. And it's that goes across the board.
As Captain Morgan always says, that ain't beer, but it's what beer looks like when I'm done with it.
That's it.
You only rent it. It's true. You only rent liquor, then you pee it out. So,
well,
did you know that all of us are actually alchemists? Right? We're all chemical engineers because we can drink beer and turn it into urine.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right?
Before your eyes.
One of the things I enjoyed was I don't drink really American beer. I drink something else, Dutch, German, or
Dutch beer.
I love brown ale. That is from England. It's called brown ale. This little bottles, and that's nice.
We had a bit with 10 Seconds of Harmony about Dutch beer. That started our bit about Amsterdam. I was in Amsterdam once, and I saw a dike. You saw a dike in Amsterdam? Yes. Where did you see this dike? Right alongside the street. Oh, really? You saw a dike along the street in Amsterdam? Yes. Well, what was she doing? What was this dike doing? Well, this dike was taking a leak. It was leaking on the street. You saw a dike leaking on the street in Amsterdam? How extraordinary. What did you do? I said, well, I went and I put my finger in the hole. Well, why would you do that? To keep it from leaking on the street. And it just built it. Well, what happened? It didn't work. I had to shove my whole damn fist up inside. And the bit went on and on and on. That was our playoff of Dutch beer. What kind of beer should we get? How about Dutch beer? No, I was in Amsterdam once because blah, blah, blah.
I was in Amsterdam and Rotterdam, but the crazy thing I saw, well, just not the red light district, but also we went into a pub and had a couple ales, and then you can go upstairs and it was a hash bar. That was whoa, that's something.
Did you ever get to the Bulldog downtown, Ruben?
Say no, I didn't. No.
Yeah, the Bulldog is, you know, the big tourist weed place down in the city. It's actually just out. I think it's just outside the airport.
Now I just go to my local tattoo friend's parlor, his shop. I don't want any of that.
Yeah, I mean now you know, it's interesting how the idea of recreational or medicinal use of plant medicine, because everything that we're talking about, whether it's alcohol or smoking or anything else, it's all plant-based, right?
Sure.
It all comes from some kind of plant, some kind of organic vegetation. And it's interesting how some of the most profound effects on the human condition and experience comes from these various plants. And I think that what we're about to see, to me, I stopped drinking alcohol last summer. It was a conscious decision to go through a process that I've been working on for myself. And because I've been a consummate connoisseur of beer for 40 plus years. And a Scotch drinker. But I decided that I wanted to go through a process of eliminating that and making some alchemical changes to my biological condition. So,
hey, Anita Palmer, we're just about ready to shut down the show. So you made it just in time.
So I decided that I wanted to make that change and start doing more research on it. I'm going to posit and just toss out there that I think what we're about to see over the next few years is a radical shift in the understanding of the importance of plant medicine, particularly as it relates to psilocybin, mescaline, DMT, ayahuasca, all of the different what are typically in the psychedelic category. I think that those medicines, those alchemical compositions, are going to become incredibly important, and our entire view of them is going to shift 180 degrees.
I totally agree, because
you're right.
I've been with I've done some research and worked with I've been to ceremonies where peyote was involved, and it's called the NAC, the Native American Church. But with those kind of alchemy, as you're saying, in plant-based substances, whether it's tobacco to marijuana, I've had some good Kush out of Denver. I'm not a frequent marijuana smoker, but every once in a great, I don't smoke anymore. No tobacco, none, no chewing tobacco. But peyote is something where it has to be guided by a shaman or a medicine man or a priestess, somebody, because if you don't take it, then it's like taking a bad upper or downer. You're thrown into the deep waters of the psychological waters.
You have to have a guide.
You're gonna have a bad trip. So when it's guided through meditation, prayer, and they would take it, and when you eat peyote, it's cactus based, and the way they would get peyote, they would harvest it at night, and the Indians would actually have little bows and arrows and shoot at the cactus, take it, make it into a mash, and you consume it, and it's a hallucinogenic, but you're guided through music and dance and song, and you will always throw up with peyote. So.
Growing up.
But the thing is that to me, the importance of the biochemical interaction with the human condition as we experience it. Our mind is not our brain. Our brain is an organ that interfaces with the mind, which is the etheric consciousness that exists, that is unseen yet experienced and known. It's what makes us who we are. It's where our personality actually is. But the biochemical reactions that can tap into and illuminate and provide access to and from that conscious state is where all the magic is. And I think that we're going to see a significant transformation in the way that medicine is looked at, especially with this major failure that they just went through with this whole vaccine virus nonsense, which has done nothing but, completely.
Which is slightly going to mess with your genome. Just don't worry about it.
Sure. If nothing else, it's proven that these experts and authorities are
don't know what they're doing.
Full of shit.
Yeah,
absolutely. We got to leave it on
in
that
any way,
note,
shape, or
Professor.
form.
You should come on the show this week and we should talk about this because I think it's a very important topic.
I agree. I'm going to say this real quick. It's like a vision quest, chemical.
Yes.
That we're trying to get onto. But
yes.
We'll talk about that another time.
I completely agree. And I think that is one of the major things that's going to save us and facilitate this transformative disruption that we're going through.
I agree.
In the consciousness and the physical and mental wellness of humanity.
Well, and there's a lot of people that are bringing out
that this week, Professor. I appreciate
plant-based cures that were popular in the 1800s.
So we got to go, folks.
So
it is the end of the show. It is 11:05 for a Sunday morning. You guys all get on with your Sundays. Uncle Dave, good to have you here. See you next time. And
hey,
Ruben,
go Chiefs! Go Chiefs!
No what?
Go Chiefs!
Go Chiefs! There it is. Thank you. All right, guys. Thanks for being here. We are over time, so I'm going to cut this off kind of quick. I have other things going on, so thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here. It means a lot to me that you would show up and that you'd be part of this program. So we're going to get out of here. Live long and prosper. We'll see you Monday night, by the way, with the Intrepid Radio program.